Hi everyone, this is Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Bits and Bytes model rocket kit by Custom Rockets. And this is being recorded as part of a live rocketry class, and so the tone of this video may be a little bit different than what you've seen and heard in my other videos. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with the rocket in the class. Alright, everybody, go ahead and open these things up. You can just take your hobby knife and slit it across the top. Don't ruin the bag as you'll put your parts back in here. Alright, so just go ahead and empty everything out to begin with. Alright, so if you go to the instruction sheet here, on the first page it'll have kind of an exploded view of the rocket. And so make sure you have everything shown there. So we've got our body tube here. And make sure there's nothing inside of it. Sometimes smaller parts hide inside. So this is the motor mount tube. And then you've got the nose cone is in two pieces. So the main one will just be floating around in the main bag. And then there will be a base right here in the small parts bag. And you can just leave the small parts bag closed for the moment. You also check the other stuff in here. So you've got two centering rings. And those will be down here. A thrust ring here that will go on the top of the motor mount, engine clip, and the launch lug. So all those are good. All right, now this one has an elastic shock cord instead of the rubber ones I showed you earlier, but it does the same thing. All right, these will be your fins, and they're square fins, so that they look a little bit different from the alpha I showed you earlier. Work the same way. All right, and sometimes these get popped out. If you got a fin or two popped out of the stock, it's not a big deal. And then since this is a fairly lightweight rocket, it uses a streamer rather than a parachute. Okay, and then the last, you should have this stick-on decal. Okay, our first step then is to assemble the motor mount. So go ahead and get the motor mount tube and set the other stuff aside so they're not in our way. All right, you'll need to open up the small package now. All right, and here we're going to need everything except for the launch lug and the nose cone base. You can set those aside. Preferentially in here we're going to use the metric system, but in some cases the kits are only done in imperial measurements. The reason for the metric system is that it's actually a whole lot easier to use once you're used to it. It's also what the rest of the world uses. Americans. So go ahead and take a ruler, and from each end mark half of an inch. Mark half an inch from this end. Well, it'll have a slit in one end, and that's different. We'll come to that in a minute. All right, and then half an inch from the other end. Now, the end that has the slot cut in already, that's going to be the forward end. So on the opposite end, the one without the slot, just write down here, aft. AFT, which simply means the back. And this way you don't get mixed up later on. Try and put it in backwards. Okay, now take the engine clip, and the end that just has the right angle on it here, that's going to pop into that slit that's cut near the top. So it should look like that. Okay. Once you've got that, then take one of the centering rings, slide it over the top, and all the way down to the mark on the aft end. Okay, and then you're going to take the other one, slide it down so that you can see the mark on the forward end. So the two rings should be on the insides of those two marks. Okay, so now on the aft ring, pull it forward a little bit, so you've got about the ring's width here between the line and the ring. go ahead and take your glue, and you're going to run a bead of, that's a lot of glue. All right, not quite that much. All right, just run a bead of glue along there. Now I just covered up my mark. Don't do that. All right, so there's my mark again. All right, and as soon as you get the glue on there, then go ahead and pull it down till it reaches your mark again. Yeah, don't cover your mark to begin with, but then once you've got a ring of glue there, then you can go ahead and pull it down to the mark once more. And if you have excess glue on your finger, you can put that on the other side. All right, now you're going to do the same thing on the forward ring. Go ahead and pull it down below the mark. All right, and you're going to put another ring of glue around there and then push it back up to the mark. And again, you're going to want to do it fairly quickly or the glue will start to set and it'll make it harder to move. And then make sure you don't have any glue up on top of the ring there. So you can just take a tissue and wipe off that top surface. All right, now for this last part, what we're going to do is put some glue on the outside of the thrust ring. Again, you don't want this, you want a nice even coating but not really heavy. So just smear it around with your finger here. And then this is going to go into the forward end of the tube. So you can see there at the top, where the top of the engine clip is, your thrust ring is going to go down right on top of that. Okay, and it's going to come close, but not completely flush to the top of the tube. Okay, and then once you've got that, go ahead and just set it aside, and we're going to let that glue completely dry. All right, so I've given everybody some plastic model cement, and we're going to skip ahead here to step 8. So while the motor mount is drying, we can assemble the nose cone. All right, so you're going to need the nose cone itself and then the base here. And the trick here is to get just the right amount of glue. Okay, so what you want to do is run this in a bead just along the inside edge, but not very thick. If you get this too thick, it'll melt the nose cone, and that's not a good thing. So about like that. Okay. And then once you've got that bead all the way around the edge, just pop this in, twist it back and forth a couple of times to seat it, and then hold it in place for about 20 seconds, and then you can set it aside as well. If you don't have plastic model cement, you can use super glue in this step, but it's not quite as good. All right, so coming back to step 2, we're going to mark the body tube. And so you put the body tube right in the center of this. Now, that's actually not the correct size. Okay, so in cases like this, you can look at, you'll find these in lots of references. And the way this booklet got printed, it may not be exact, but what you can do is just find one that's close and center it. Okay, and then on every place there where it says 4, just make a little tick on your tube. And just do that all the way around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Some of them are like inside of the right.
All right, so when you get done, you should have these 4 tick marks spaced evenly around. Okay, now something that they did not put on this is a mark for the launch lug. And so to do that, just find the space between any two of your marks here and just estimate where the halfway point is. And make another mark there. I'm going to mark that one as an LL, so I know it's a launch lug and not a fin. Okay, now for this next part, we're going to do it on the windowsill, or on the door sills here. But I'm going to show you here, this is like a portable door sill. It's just a bunch of right angles that we put this against. So I'll show you on the door sills as well. But here you're going to find your mark, and you just draw a line about 1/3 of the way up the body tube. And do that for each of your fin lines.
Even like the one we put in halfway.
Yep, the launch lug one you're going to put up about halfway. So it's going to be a little bit longer. All right, now if you come over here to the door frames, come on over. And before we cut anything out, what we'll do is just take this whole sheet and you're going to sand it with the grain. So go in the direction of the grain. And we're just going to smooth this out. And you can turn it around. What's that?
This side, this doesn't matter.
You're going to do both sides. So do one side, then the other. Flip the whole thing over. So here I'm going to cut out these. In sanding, you probably loosen most of them. They've got some little tiny points here. You just got to cut through those. All right, now you notice that they've burned a little tick mark into the side of each one of these. That's to mark that as the root edge. So the edge that has the tick mark, that's the edge that will be glued to the rocket. Okay, which means that either of the other two edges here, so if this is the root that's going to glue to the rocket like this, since these are square fins, either of these two edges here can be the leading edge. Okay, and notice the grain is going parallel to the leading edge, even in a square fin. Okay, so once you've got those out, go ahead, and here you can just take either piece of sandpaper, put it on your work surface, and first of all, just drag each edge across just 1 or 2 times to remove the soot from the laser cutter. Okay, and then once you've got that done, then take all of the fins, stack them together so that the root edges are all on the same side, like this. Okay, and I'm going to just push those into a stack, and now you just want to make sure they're all even. So if I tamp these down against the root edge, okay, there shouldn't be a lot of unevenness between the fins. If there is, you can take that whole stack of fins and sand it on whatever edge is uneven. All right, so I've got a little bit of uneven on the tip edge, so I'm just going to bring those over here and just sand them all at the same time, and that'll give me a uniform size. All right. Shouldn't take too much of this since these laser cuts are usually pretty accurate. Okay, and then the last thing to do with the fins is on the leading edge. So just pick whatever edge is going to be your leading edge. It just has to be one that's perpendicular from the root edge here. And we're just going to round that off. So you can start by just sanding down the corner edges a little bit. And just keep doing that back and forth. Now be careful, don't do it too hard so you don't want to break a fin.
The size is not the size.
Just the edges here, okay? And just on the leading edge. And then once you get those corners rounded over, then you can just start rounding the rest of that edge. And if you look at it in cross section here, you'll be able to see if you're on track and if you're even. So mine's a little uneven there. And this just makes it a little bit streamlined. All right, and then once you've got one fin done, then do the same thing to the other three. All right, and we've got our fins sanded and shaped, so we're going to put this stuff together now. You're going to need one of the long Q-tip looking applicators. Okay, so what we're going to do here is put in the engine mount, and first just dry fit this in. So just go ahead and stick that in there and line up the engine clip with your launch lug line, and then when this is fully installed, the two tubes will be flush with each other. Alright, so once you make sure everything fits okay and there's nothing grabbing or jamming, then take the applicator here and you're just going to use it to measure. So put the tip against the forward motor mount ring, forward centering ring there, and then put your thumbnail on the shaft where it lines up with the aft portion of the motor mount. Okay, then take your glue, okay, and you're going to cover this. Come on, glue. All right. Cover the whole swab there with glue. You don't want so much that it's going to drip down. And make sure you're doing this over your poster board so you don't get it all over the table. All right, and now watch this. What I'm going to do is put this in without touching, and then bring it up against the inside and rotate that around using my thumbnail as a stop. Okay. Once you've got that, then go ahead and line up your motor mount again so that the engine clip's lined up with the launch lug line, and just slide that in. And it may feel a little loose at first, but just put it up to that flush point. All right, and then we're just going to let it dry for about 5 minutes or so. All right, so at this point, go ahead and check your motor mount here and just give it a little bit of a tug. Don't pull hard on it, but it should be snug there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is prep for the fin. So take your sandpaper here, and what we're going to do on the fin lines is, and you can take one of your fins if you need to, just kind of give you an idea of where it's going to be there. All right, and what we're going to do is just sand lightly that line, just a few strokes. You don't need a lot here. And what this is doing is it just takes the glossy finish off, and this is going to make your glue stick better. And so just go around and do that to every one of your fin lines. Okay, and then for the launch lug line, take your ruler and put a little cross line at 3 inches from the aft end. Lost my pencil.
You said 3 inches wide?
3 inches from the aft end. So just like this, put a little tick mark there on your launch lug line, 3 inches from the bottom. Okay, and then just like you did with your fin lines, at that 3-inch point, go beyond it about 1.5 inches or so. That's what your launch lug is. And just roughen it up a little bit as well.
From the bottom or at that tick mark?
From the tick mark forward. Okay, take your first fin. All right, now remember, you've rounded off one of the edges. That's going to face forward.
So do we need the one that we rounded off?
Yep. So just take your first one here. All right, so whatever your leading edge should be rounded, and the root edge has that little tick mark on it. Okay. Take your glue. Now here, people tend to think that more glue is better. It is not. This is a case where less is better. So you're just going to put a little bit of glue right along that root edge. And I'm going to take my finger here and just smooth that out. So I want a nice thin layer of glue uniformly covering it. Okay, and now I'm going to bring this to one of my fin lines. And let me check something really quick here. Yeah, this goes flush with the edge. All right, so with the bottom edge here, I'm going to just run along that line. I'm going to touch it to it. Okay, and then I'll pull it away. So now I've got a little bit of glue on the tube and a little bit of glue on the fin. And I'm going to wait 30 seconds. And this is going to allow it to get tacky and stickier. Yep, any one of your fin lines. All right, now you have too much glue. Wipe that stuff off the edge. See that? You just want a very thin amount on the root edge, nothing on the sides and such. All right, and after 30 seconds, go ahead and put this back on. All right. Firmly push it there for a few seconds and then check it from the end. So make sure it's perpendicular there and not leaning over one way or another. All right, and also that it's running straight along that line and along your body tube. Okay, once you've got it all aligned, then go ahead and just brace it against something on your tabletop there. So it just stands straight up for a bit. Okay, and we're going to wait about 5 minutes to let that dry. Now, if you got too much glue on it, it's actually going to take it longer to dry, which is why I want that just that very thin film on the edge. We'll reinforce it later. Okay, so with the second fin, just do it the same way. Pop it on there, pull it back off. Okay, you'll also want to take a look and make sure that it's perpendicular to the previous one. All right, so my line's actually a little bit off, so I'm going to move it over. Okay, so you should have a nice 90-degree angle between these two fins. If not, you may have to shift it over. Like I said, when I drew my line on there, it somehow got off a little bit. And so I just moved the whole thing over about 2 millimeters. All right, so here once again, as you do this, make sure your lines are lining up. Okay, so once again, we'll wait a little bit. Okay, and one more for the last fin there. If you're not to your last fin, that's fine, we got time. It's pretty close to even.
We're almost done.
Like Bytes. Like, say it wrong. Oh no. Oh wait, no, it's upside down. That's why. I was looking at it this way. I was like, it's not saying it.
All right. So mine's not perfectly square, but it's close enough. All right, so if you got all your fins on, or even if you don't, you can do this independent of the fins. Take your launch lug, and you're going to treat this kind of like a fin. So once again, just put a thin bead of glue here. Now don't wipe it down with your finger like we did previously. We want it to be a little bit taller. All right, and then find your launch lug line. And then just put this against it. And you usually don't have to do the tackiness trick, so you can just glue that right on. But make sure it's straight. So to sight down your rocket, it should be parallel with the rocket. Okay, and it should be above the, forward of the line. And on the front page, yeah, rocket instructions, not the textbook. All right, and you're going to cut out this little trapezoid thing here, the whole thing. This is your shock cord mount.
Oh, so we need to use our cutting board?
Use your cutting board, not the tabletop.
Just cut your air.
Oh, so cut this stuff out?
Yep, just cut that piece out.
What about this blade thing?
Okay, so once you've got that cut out, make sure you're working on a safe surface here so you don't get glue all over the tabletops. All right, and the first thing you do is just put some glue down the whole length of this, and then use your finger and smear it all over the surface. We want a nice uniform coating of glue.
On the back?
On the front where all the numbers are.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so proud of you.
Okay.
Ooh, I don't like the texture.
No, you're gonna put it.
All right, so now you're going to take the shock cord itself, all right, and this is going to go across the 2 and the 3 region at an angle, like that. Okay, and then once you've got that, come here. All right, glue mine to the paper here. All right. All right, so once you've got that laid down, then you're going to take the 1 and fold it over into the 2. All right, and go ahead and squish everything out of that. You don't want any air bubbles in there. And then take the 2, including the shock cord, and fold it over the 3. And the reason we put it at an angle is so that now it lays beside itself instead of entirely on top of itself. So it makes it flatter. Okay?
And then you stick both.
And then any of the excess glue there, just smear it up here on the top. All right, so once you got it together like that, then you're going to bow it. So you're going to make a curve here. All right, so look what I'm doing. All right, you're going to curve this so that when you look at it edge on, it's convex. Okay. Now, once you've got that, add a little bit more glue to the face. If you already had lots of leftover glue, then you don't have to worry about this, but you want a nice, even, thin coating of glue here. Okay, now you have to be really careful now. Take your rocket And it doesn't matter which way it's oriented, just you're going to slide this down the front. All right, and it needs to be down at least 1.5 inches from the top. Okay, and I suggest that just put it down as far as you can get it. So you got long, skinny fingers, put it way down that tube. All right, and then with your finger inside the tube, hold your hand. Pay attention. Hold your hand. All right, and press against your shock cord mount and into your hand. And you want to, again, get everything glued down as firmly and as flatly as possible.
So on this back piece, after we coated it, we put glue on it?
Yep. All right, so now if you look down there, there's nothing poking up. Now, once it's in there, all right, get your rocket mount here that you made. Okay, and carefully watch how this is going in. Everybody, pay attention here. To put this in, come in at an angle underneath your clip and then lift it in and then gently slide it on. Don't bonk any of your fins or they may come off again. All right, but now the shock cord can hang off of it here without any problems. The glue on the launch lug and fins has dried, and so now what I'm going to do is strengthen those joints by applying fillets of additional glue. And so here all I'm going to do is just run this along the length. We'll start with this launch lug here, do both sides. Okay, you probably want a tissue or a rag handy here to wipe off your fingers. Okay, and then just smooth this in with a finger. And this will help improve the aerodynamics as well as the strength. Be careful not to get any glue inside the launch lug there. And then on the fins, we'll do the same thing here right along the fin and the body tube. So I like to do 2 facing fins at once. Okay, and once again, we're just going to smooth that in. If you want really thick fillets, it's best to do multiple layers. Do your first layer with glue, and then if you want something that builds up easier, you can use things like contour putty or wood putty, wood filler, that type of thing, to build these up. You don't need to do that, but some people like to have really thick fillets that kind of flow from the fin to the body tube. Okay. Let this dry for about 5 minutes and then go on to do the other fins. Again, about 5 minutes per face. And you want to keep this horizontal while you're doing this until the glue dries. Otherwise, the glue may tend to run toward one direction or the other. So I'll do the other fins off camera. Here on the shock cord, I've simply tied 2 half hitches or a double knot in the shock cord onto the eyelet here of the nose cone. And then I've cut off any remaining material here. You want about 1/4 inch or 5 millimeters or so of material on the end so it doesn't pull through. But if it extends too far, it can get caught up here against the shoulder and the nose cone. Okay. Once you've got that in place, then go ahead and take just a little dot of glue here, just a small amount, and then just work that into the knot, and that'll help keep that from unraveling. All right, the other thing we can do is attach the streamer, and for this we want to go down about 1/3 of the way from the nose cone on the shock cord, and then take some transparent tape and your streamer. So here I'm just going to take a length of transparent tape, okay, about 1.5 to 2 inches, and I'm going to put that about halfway down the streamer here, or put the streamer halfway down the tape, I should say. Okay, and then all we have to do is move this around. Put the elastic across the edge of the streamer, and then fold the tape over and back onto the streamer like this. And then just crease it down well. If you have actual cellophane tape rather than the vanishing tape, I think it works a little bit better, but either one will work for this. And then when we're ready, you'll simply fold this over upon itself several times. Okay, and we just keep doing that until you get just a short piece here, and then you can roll that up upon itself and up against the shock cord, and then this will fit directly into the rocket along with the shock cord, and then you'll have nothing but nose cone there. So here I'll show this. So you can just take a couple of loops of shock cord if you need to. Here, let's turn this around a little bit. I seem to be intent on making a big knot out of it. Here we go. Alright, so just take your shock cord down there, and then your packed streamer can go in next, and then the remainder of the shock cord, and then the nose cone. Okay. One last thing you can do with this is do what's called a shake test. So with everything packed, give it a shake. The nose cone should not come out. So if your nose cone's just a little bit loose there, you can fix that with a small amount of masking tape. Okay, and you can start with just a little bit. You don't need to wrap the entire shoulder. Okay, a lot of times just a quarter of a circumference or half a circumference may be enough. All right, so you just put that in there and give it another shake. All right, and that's not coming out anymore. So that's all it really needs. And then it should also be loose enough that it'll come out without requiring a lot of tension on it. Okay, so structurally, this rocket is finished. Hope you had a good time building it. It's actually a kind of a fun kit to build. I'm not going to go into much on the finishing here, though I do want to tell you one thing, is if you want to paint this nose cone, you'll want to roughen it up by using some 320 or 400 grit sandpaper on it, because it's got a really glossy finish, and a lot of times the paint won't stick to this very well. But other than that, you can either paint this like it shows on the packaging, or paint this however you like. Have a great flight, have a safe recovery, and please stay tuned to watch more of my videos.